Monday. Today is Monday, November 18th, 2019. We're here in beautiful Orlando with my new friend. I'm super excited to discuss a lot of things with the Libertarian Party unicorn, self-described, I think, Ken Armstrong. Welcome to the show, Ken.
Hey, good to be here.
I'm very excited to have you here. I think it's really fascinating when anybody has the passion to file to run for any office, let alone President of the United States. I think that's amazing. So we want to dive into that, deep dive, get to know Ken better. And so we always like to start with a little background. So to give us a little bit of information about you, and then we want to hear your journey on how you got to file for running for the president.
Well, first of all, I'm not sure if it's passion or insanity when you run for president of the United States.
I am sure it's
We were talking a little bit before the show about, people start watching you when you do this thing, and that's not conspiracy, that's the real thing. But no, I've had a military background. I've had a lot of different public service type things, college instructor, newspaper columnist, a lot of work in nonprofits. I'm a Weinberg Fellow of Hawaii Pacific University. Met my beautiful wife in Hawaii who grew up there. We met when I was with Habitat for Humanity in Hawaii. So
you were with Habitat.
I was with Habitat, and that was actually, I've had a lot of really interesting jobs in my life. That was my favorite job in my whole life.
Well, there's just so much love and passion
it was
that go
fabulous.
into that.
Just fabulous.
How did you always have a spirit for this? Like we were joking earlier before the show, did you wake up, were you 5 years old and then decided, hey, I want to be a public servant, I want to do this? What was the journey to get you to serving in the military, getting into public service? What did you want to be when you grew up originally?
I think public service has kind of always been in my blood, and I don't say that to build myself up, just that it's always been something that inspired me, and I've always looked toward those kind of careers. But I hadn't thought of being crazy enough to run for president until about a year ago when it started kind of bubbling up. And then when the government shut down last December through January, the government was shut down. And I was watching a lot of things about it, because honestly, there's some good stuff about the government shutting down too, but there was a lot of horrible stuff happening to people. And the Secretary of Commerce, Wilbur Ross, couldn't understand why people were upset, and he said, why don't they just go out and get loans? And my head exploded when he said that. And I said, if our government is so out of touch that the Secretary of Commerce doesn't understand economic conditions in the country, I got grandchildren. I can't sit on the sideline anymore and let the world go that way. So that's really that was what catapulted.
So, but your background got you that point, right? So you said you were in public service. Habitat is an amazing organization.
It is.
Military, obviously, you have a heart for the military personally. But taking that extra step, a lot of people want to make change. I want to do the right thing. And then there's a lot of sideline people who just want to sit and complain, or they want to sit and they have great ideas and then they don't implement them. So you get aggravated enough. I think I've talked to enough people who run for office to know there's that breaking point. There's that thing that obviously you just shared, that you go, all right, that's it, enough, I want to do something. But then you got to go fill the paperwork out, people. Then you've got a whole. This is a commitment level. Public office in general is a commitment level, but President of the United States obviously comes with its own crazy commitment level. So when you join, what does your beautiful wife say? Or when you want to do it, does she say, "You're insane. Go back to Habitat. Go do something else. Blow off some steam," or does she say, "That's great, Ken. Let's do it. We're going to do it together"?
Well, after she retracted the divorce papers, it was a few days before she was reconciled to the whole thing. In fact, we had a couple of colorful conversations about it. But once she really understood what I was talking about and what my motive was, she's been absolutely on board, and we've been on the road for 6 months now. I haven't slept in my own bed since May. And
let's talk about that process, because just because you file, all right, let's say you go through that, you file. Then you have, if you're going to do a campaign and you really want to make a difference, you have to do what you're talking about doing. But I think people don't realize. Talk about the commitment, and why is the travel so important?
Well, in my case, because I wasn't a household name, still am not, it was really important to get out there and meet people, not just to talk to them, but also to listen to them. That was a very important part of what we were doing. And getting out there and just building the name recognition, talking to the, you understand how it works, Ted, with media. You kind of start at the low-level media markets and you work your way up. And so we really had to go to some off the edge of the map sort of places to start getting known, and it's been a challenging time.
It must be interesting, because I would imagine that if you go to, I've got a Facebook Live show, so I mean I'm as low level media as you can get. But you go to a news station in Dubuque, Iowa, for example, and you say, "I'm Ken Armstrong, I'm running for president." And they're like, "Yeah, dude, there's a laundry list of people ahead of you, and we don't have time for you." I would imagine you have to figure out how to get that traction going. What do you all talk about in order to get the interviews, in order to do the press?
Well, a lot of it is about the hook. You gotta have some kind of media hook out there that attracts them to hearing about you, and so we started off with a hook that I was the veteran who'd basically made myself homeless to run for president, and we worked with that for a little while, and it's still true, but we did work with that for a little while, and that attracted a little bit of media. And then sort of building on that, as people start realizing, wow, this guy actually has something to say, and then they start listening to you. And it wasn't Dubuque, Iowa. In my case, it was Mason City, Iowa.
I know I always go to Iowa. I don't know why.
Really, I mean, yeah, they were great to me there.
And I think what happens with it, and that's what I want to dive a little deeper into, because there's so many choices out there, because social media, I mean, it's accessible 24/7, and so you get this information overload, and so sometimes you shut it off, sometimes you don't even want to listen. How do you differentiate yourself? I love the title of the show. I love the unicorn part, which I want to get to that in a minute. But what do you talk about with the people, and what are they saying to you? That's the part I'm really fascinated about. What are they saying to you? Because the listening is so critical. What are they saying to you? And has it shifted? I've asked like 3 questions, but I want you to answer all of them. I'm kidding. Has it shifted your way of interacting with the general populace?
Yeah, it has, actually. And the answer to all of those questions really is the listening has been what we've been speaking about, really. In fact, I was just talking to a delegation in California over the phone the other day, and they had a hard time understanding that my key point really is listening. Not that I have some very strong policy positions, but we get out there and we talk to people. We talked to the mother in Cincinnati, Ohio, whose concern was that she has a special needs child and her school district can't afford to bus the child. And she said, "How can you as president affect that?" And I said, "Wow." In my head I'm going, well, the president of the United States doesn't run your school buses. But it occurred to me, and this is what I shared with her, the federal government is putting so many unfunded mandates on local school districts that they then can't afford to meet their own needs because they're meeting the unfunded mandates from the federal government. So there really is a thing that the president can do. And that's where listening to her and understanding where that impacted this woman in Cincinnati who never would have been able to talk to government that way. And I'll never forget talking to her about it.
Well, she made an impact on you too. I think that's what, when I've talked to candidates, when I've had people on who are running for office, they're traveling either the county or the country, and they're thinking about the people. It's the stories they take with them, and then that changes. That is almost helps metamorphosize you into, all right, look, I listened to that. Now I need to approach people differently. So what's your number one thing that you want to change? If you become president, do we say if or do we say when?
When I become president.
So as soon as I said that, I thought he's going to correct me. When you become president, what's the number? What are some of the top 1 or 2 things that you really want to implement? Because the world, a lot of people will say the world's going to hell in a handbasket. Then you've got a whole bunch of people who say, don't mess with the economy, it's amazing. and then you've got all the in-betweens. So what do you want to do different? What do you see? Where do you see the need?
Well, first of all, we got to get government off of people's backs. And I know a lot of people talk about that, but when you listen to most candidates, they'll tell you how you need to get government off of people's backs. And in order to do that, here's the regulation they're going to pass, and here's the law they're going to pass. And what it equals is more government on your backs. And really, my approach to it is we have to have a president in the White House who is actually willing to give up a lot of the power that has accrued in many cases actually unconstitutionally, but that's a whole different issue. But we just have to have somebody who's willing to just say, you know, I don't need to be in charge of the world. I don't need to be the king of the world. We need to give a lot of this power back to the people the way the founders wanted it to be, and return this country to, you know, Abe Lincoln said, of the people, by the people, for the people, and really, we got to get back to that.
How do we do that? Because I love that idea. I feel like I also believe that we have really put a lot of stress on backs and no funding. So like you said earlier, people have to do a lot of things unfunded. I love that. So what do you do? Does it go back to the state? Does it go back to the district? Does it go back to the county? What do you release? What power do you release in order for that to actually become something that's impactful and implementable?
My litmus test is, does the federal government actually have to do it? And that goes back to the Constitution and the enumerated rights. 10th Amendment says the federal government doesn't have any power that's not specifically enumerated. And over the years, they've accrued. Like, for example, they build a federal highway in your state. You've got one buzzing right by here right now. And they say, oh yeah, we'll build the federal highway in your state and we'll put a lot of people to work, but only if you agree to do this and to do this. You know, you've got to have this alcohol law, you've got to have this speed limit law. So they have accrued power to the federal government by twisting purse strings on the states, which is unconstitutional. And I just think that we need to get out of that mode, give the government back to the people. And that also, by the way, means insisting that Congress start doing their job again, because they're the body of government that's most accountable to the people, and that was always the design.
How have they lost that? What's your beliefs? Why do you believe that we've lost that? Because I feel like unless I personally know an elected official, that I'm not going to be heard, and I feel like I'm not alone. I feel like most of us believe, that's why the voting, in my opinion, is so low, the voter turnout, because people really believe that it doesn't matter what their voice is because they don't feel heard. What happened? Has it always been like that? I don't know these answers. These are things I always wanted to ask. Has it always been like that, or has it just been whittled away as time has gone?
It has been. You know, when George Washington took office as president, they said, what are we going to call you? He said, I don't know, call me Mr. President, that was like saying in the 18th century, that was like saying, just call me George. You know, it was very friendly, very casual sort of thing. And the Constitution says we don't have any titles of nobility in our country, but we've accrued when we talk about a senator or a congressman or a president, we talk about them as if they're nobility. We roll out a red carpet for them. The red carpet ought to be rolling out for the guy that's out of work, but we're rolling out the red carpet for this guy who's making $400,000 a year and flying in a huge plane, and that's just upside down. So we've given these people this rock star status in the country, and then we wonder why they act so removed from us. We need to get back to citizen government and not rock star government.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes like when I've had anybody in office, it's the title beforehand. Like I refer to them as Senator so-and-so, or so yeah, there's this interesting, I like the rock star title thing because I think that is what's happened. So how do we empower the citizens without it becoming an anarchy, for lack of a better word? How do citizens get the control? And because everybody's human, right? So that's the whole thing with this. Or you've got bad eggs, and I'm talking about the good eggs, so let's focus on the good eggs. How do we get the citizens involved in a way that actually is impactful and manageable at the same time?
Well, and I'm not blowing sunshine up your skirt here, but this is the thing that we've got available to us that's been missing for the last century. You know, a century ago we had newspapers in every town, and they were edited by local people, and local people read cover to cover in the newspapers. And when that went away, citizens stopped sort of being involved in life and government. What you're doing right now, Ted, this is the newspaper of the 21st century. This is where the average person really gets to get involved in life, and you get to make a difference, and people get to hear, and they get to realize, hey, wow, I have a voice and I'm empowered. And if we get people excited enough about having their voice, you know, they may want to do things that I don't particularly want them to do, but that's still good. That's what we want them to do.
I agree. I think with the voice, people just don't feel like it matters. We had a low turnout for our local mayoral race recently, and it's because people just feel like it doesn't. What difference? What's one vote? What's my voice? The party line's going to run it all. And even though I know that is not the case every single time, all politicians are not bad people. All politicians are not trying to get money out of your pocket. There are people like Ken who are running because they have a heart and a passion and maybe some craziness to take this on. But I think a lot of people just feel completely like it just doesn't matter. That it's not worth my effort. But you're right, the grassroots, that's why I love you going state to state, even though you probably want to sleep in your own bed at some point. Well, it has to be.
It is.
It has to be. Have there been major? Have you met any kind of resistance to you coming into a state or to a city? Are there people who are still just so party line that you can't seem to get them to talk so that you are able to listen to them?
You know, there are individuals, we've bumped into people who say, I only support so-and-so, or, you know, whatever. And there are people who say, well, you're a third party, you never have a chance. But you know, what's really interesting, Ted, is most of the people that we've encountered, and I'll say over 2/3 of the people that we've encountered, get what we're trying to do. Maybe they're a little afraid of it because there are people who are afraid that if they take a chance on a third party that the other guys are going to win. You know, and I understand that, but I think most of the people in the country are sort of tired of the status quo, and they know that something has to be different. And we've been very. I'm looking out here at my wife and my road manager because they've been on this with me for the whole time, and people have been really gracious to us, really welcoming, offered us to stay in their homes and you know, let us buy you a meal and this and that, and they've been very, very kind.
That's why I'm not a giant fan. Sorry to all of my mainstream media people, but mainstream media paints this interesting picture of how the world is, and thankfully, social media, with all of its faults, you can still get to some good information on social media because I don't have any agenda. They have ratings. I don't have sponsors and advertisers. They do.
Yeah.
There's accountability in the mainstream media, which then helps direct how the story is going to be told and the statistics that are going to be shared. And so it's so important. That's why I love to hear those stories, because I'm a believer that most people are good at heart and most people do want some change. They just don't believe that they're ever going to be heard about it. All right, so a lot of people, you mentioned it, third party.
Yeah.
What defines or what is a libertarian?
Well, libertarians in a nutshell, and there's a broad spectrum. They go from the anarchists you were talking about all the way up to, on the other end, almost Republican. But libertarians basically believe in the absolute minimal government. Some believe in no government at all. What I believe in is we have the minimum structures in place to provide safety and security for people, to provide the absolute necessary services, and then we free the people up to live and to run their own lives. And I do believe pretty much in consumer-driven economies and people making their own choices.
Is libertarian, I'm going to ask these questions because I don't know. So I'm imagining if I don't know, they don't know. Is libertarian, would you consider that middle-leaning left, middle-leaning right? Would you consider it, I know you said all across the spectrum, but I think people like to try to figure out where does that look on issues, because you know people are very absolute, left, right, or middle.
I would say, from my perspective at least, Economically, I'm probably more conservative. I know I'm more conservative than the current president. I do believe in not spending money we don't have, and I don't believe in taxing people any more than the government actually needs to tax. So I'm very conservative in that respect. In terms of social issues, whether I like something or not, and we could pick any number of social issues. People look at the libertarians and they say, oh, you're for this or you're for that. We're not necessarily for the behavior, we're just against the government prohibiting the behavior, because the government has never done a good job of prohibition. You look at the prohibition, what happened with prohibiting alcohol 100 years ago, and we're still suffering from that. And the war on drugs has not been successful, and outlawing prostitution across the country has only driven it underground and created sex trafficking of minors and things like that. So we have all kinds of negative impacts of the things government tries to control. And even if I really don't like the particular behavior, that's not the point. The point is that people have a right to make choices about their own lives, as long as those choices don't deprive other people of their rights.
I love
That's libertarianism.
I think one of the things, talking about like war on drugs and prohibition, marijuana, I think that because of social media and because the voice was so strong at the grassroots level, that we were able to finally get, and it's still a fight, people were finally able to get access to that, and it's become more quote-unquote normalized. Because the things that you're talking about, a lot of times those initiatives are driven by really powerful Washington lobbyists and people who want to make the rules because it's benefiting one person or another, or a state or a relationship. And so it's so awesome that's one of the reasons why this type of show, or anything that you're talking about with the general populace, the general population, getting to know and getting to hear and listen and make an impact, that kind of stuff needs to get out there, because you're not going to see that on mainstream media. Why is mainstream media finally picking up CBD and marijuana and pot, and why is it becoming more legal all over the place? Because social media demanded it, because the grassroots demanded it. And so I feel like we have at least a fighting chance. Now we need to get the people behind that fighting chance and realize that they can come on, they can get behind a candidate like Ken Armstrong, who wants to make a difference in a grassroots way. All right, talk about why unicorn.
Oh, the unicorn thing, and I didn't make that up, by the way. Somebody else said that.
Somebody named you that?
Somebody called me that. But it's because in the Libertarian Party, there are a lot of people who are philosophers, and they're very, very bright people, and they've read a lot, and some of them have actually been activists to an extent. I've been inside of government. I was a NATO-based commander in Italy, NATO and United Nations advisor. I was a U.S. consul representative to the Pelagi Islands. I commanded humanitarian relief after Hurricane Iniki on the island of Kauai. I've done all kinds of different things in government. I've seen how it works and how it doesn't work. I was heavily involved in the early drug wars, Operation Checkmate and Operation Wagon Wheel down in the Caribbean back, I won't even say how many years ago, but I had dark brown hair at the time. And through those things, I have seen the failure, the billions and billions of dollars spent, the lifetimes of people invested, and all of these things. And I've seen the failure of government to accomplish almost any of the goals that they set. What's going on with the wars in the Middle East right now, and most Americans don't realize that we've got troops in Africa, and we're sending people all over the world right now, and we destabilized the Middle East and then said, wow, the Middle East is not stable, we need to go over and fix that. And it's we need to have a different way of approaching.
So what's the unicorn?
The unicorn is all of my experience. I'm unique. I fit in differently than the other guys, because I've led thousands of people at a time and have the experience in government that I don't think any other libertarian candidate has.
All right, so one question before we start to wrap up,
Okay.
because I've had this asked before and I didn't know the answer. Libertarians get a lot of their socialists, right? So I don't know why that comes up, but it does. So what's the difference between libertarian and socialism? Or is that part of, people are afraid, the mainstream media, I guess, let me back up, mainstream media has made that an incredibly fearful word, because it's just an easy thing to spin. It gets good ratings, right? So what's the difference? Is there a difference, I guess is what I'm asking, and if there is, can you kind of give us your 2 cents on that?
I think the two couldn't be any more different than they are, to tell you the truth. Libertarians, there's an anarchist end of libertarianism, but socialism is all about government controlling the means of the economy. Libertarianism is exactly the opposite. Libertarianism is taking that control away from the government, putting it back in the hands of the people, and trying, hopefully, to strike an equilibrium where that works. And I think there are a lot of very intelligent people who can give you reasons why things work better when the government isn't meddling with them, isn't controlling the means of the economy and means of productivity. So we're like worlds apart from socialism.
I know that, but I'm very happy that you said it, because I have a lot of people who say, if they're a libertarian, they're a socialist.
Opposite
and
thing.
I just feel like y'all need to educate yourselves. Wikipedia, even if you have Googled it, just something. Don't buy into what somebody's told you. Do your own research, and you have the ability to do that. If you don't want to go to Google, there's a million underground sites that try to provide as much of pure news and information as possible. You just have to do a little bit more research than one quick Google search, by the way. All right, so you've been a joy to have on. We're going to share all of Ken's contact information, how you can reach out to him, how you can get involved in his campaign, how you can learn more about what he represents and what he wants to do for our country. Also, what he's done for our country, by the way. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
All right, so we're big on mentorship. I think it is a big thing that we are lacking in our world, and we're certainly lacking it here in Central Florida. We want more people to get involved. So I ask every guest to give a shout out, or 2 or 10 if you prefer, to people who've helped you along the way, maybe somebody who's mentored you.
Well, 2 biggies that I want to mention. David Thoreau at the Independent Institute was very gracious to spend some time with us at the beginning of the campaign, and loaded me down with books to read and gave me just a lot of great things to think about. So we sat with him there at at Independent Institute rather. And then on the East Coast, Larry Sharp, who was a Libertarian candidate for governor, and Larry's an amazing guy. Sat down and had dinner with him. That dinner is actually on my website. He was live streaming it while we had dinner together. So Larry Sharp was amazing, and just a brilliant thinker, great leader. But the mentors that I really want to draw attention to: the homeless woman in the parking lot in Indiana, the woman at the mom in the shopping center in Ohio. These people actually have been mentoring me. They've been honing me. So it's real people that I think mentor us better than folks who have been kind of cloistered or cut off for a long time, and I appreciate that.
I love that. I get the sense that that feeds you. It's important for us to listen. So the biggest takeaway, one of them from our conversation today, is you all have to listen better. Don't just wait for your next opportunity to speak, because if you're not hearing what they're saying, you can't make the impact that you want to make. And it's people really, really, really do just want to be heard. That's so much of the battle. And so if you can just take your own little ego or big ego out of the picture for a teeny tiny bit and just listen to what people are telling you, I think you'll make, no matter what your job is or what you're trying to do for the world or in your own world, listen. So Ken, you've been fantastic to be on. I wish you the absolute best.
I really appreciate it.
Appreciate you so much. Ken Armstrong, guys, and his 2 wonderful cohorts behind here, his beautiful wife and his road manager. Thank you guys for tuning in. Reach out to Ken. Learn. Expand your universe. Trust me, it's going to be better if you do it. We love you guys. We'll be back soon. Mwah.
Thank you so much.